Hello and welcome to Finding Your Holy Grail. My name is Mandy Simon and I am your host, and I am joined by a very special guest today, Mary Madeiras. Mary, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Please start out just by giving us a little bit of your background and sharing what seems appropriate at this time.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so I have an advanced certification in the Akashic Records,
Mhm.
and so I'm a practitioner. Um, we can talk about in a little while what that means. But how I began my career, I'll say, my career began as a television in television production and eventually directing, and so that was my path. And um, in an odd way, it led me to where I am now. It's quite often people say you were in television and now you're doing spiritual work. Oh, is one over there and is one over here? No, they're actually blending together. And so I'm a living example that when we think chapters of our lives are complete or over or in a corner now or on a shelf, not really. Because when we're working in the Akashic Records, we see that they present even more opportunities to settle into more comfortably and more powerfully what our soul's journey is and what we've chosen to do on a soul level.
Mhm. And just real briefly, if you can explain to anyone who's not familiar with what an Akashic record is.
Hmm. Well, the Akashic records, they're a it's a dimension of consciousness. They've existed since the beginning of time. And what they are is it's like a body of knowledge, and they contain everything that every soul has ever thought, uh, said, or done over the course of its lifetimes and future possibilities. So, the other thing too that is I think that is important is to talk about the word Akash, because Akash itself is a Sanskrit word, and we call the records the Akashic records. But the Akash is the presence of life itself. It's and we impact that presence, that source, with our thoughts and our feelings and our actions. And as we impact that original source, the Akash, it becomes our records, and it becomes an imprint in the Akashic realm. And
Yeah.
so it is a body of experiential knowledge, and all of what I had just said, all of that, it contains everything we've ever done. And what's really neat is when we, through sacred prayer, when we open our own records, whether it's us opening it or through a practitioner, we're able to access every aspect of our soul's journey through lifetimes.
Mhm.
If and it's usually we're accessing it through what we are desiring at a specific time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if we're feeling, very common thing that people feel today is stuck or unsure, or they're in a pivotal place in their life and they don't know which way to go, things like that. Those are common. That's a common theme in the Akashic records, people who come. And then as we open up the person's records, as a practitioner, I receive blocks of thought. It is a quantum field. It is a divine quantum field. And what happens for me is the divine moves on the spoken word. So as you and I, if we're in your records, are speaking, the divine itself, your divine aspect from your records is flowing through me and through the machinery of me, so to speak, using my imagination, my way of speaking. So for me, I hear blocks of thought. And so quantum is coming in and it's transforming into blocks of thought. And then I just relay it. It's not a psychic reading, very different, not anything like that.
Yeah.
In the past, the Akashic records were only accessed by mystics and holy individuals known to be holy. And then what has happened is, because our planet it's raising in vibration. We know that the planet is expanding, our consciousness is expanding. So in a sense, the veil is thinner. I don't like that term, but it helps us
Yeah.
make sense of it. And so it's easier to access that realm.
Yeah.
It was so easy for me when I began to open records and my own first and work on my own past and wounds and clear things. I questioned it because it was so easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I,
Why? You know why it's easy, by the way, it just popped into my
Tell
head.
me.
It's easy because we're accessing who we already are.
Mhm, mhm.
That's
Yeah,
why.
this is a really interesting aspect, and I think we'll probably get a little bit more into that as we're going along. One of the things that I realize I'm not entirely sure about in your story is how you came to find the Akashic records, uh,
Mm-hmm.
from where you started. You said it's definitely this really um, integral part of your journey and quite an obvious segue, but I'd love to know how that segue happened.
Sure. So I have to say that at the root of who I am, I've always known that there is divine. It was called different things when I was growing up, in church and things like that.
Mhm,
But I always knew, I always felt this amazing, powerful presence that choreographed all the most beautiful things that I experienced. I just knew it. No one taught it to me. It wasn't from school or religion or anything like that. So I have to say that first, because then I moved through my life growing up and then being attracted to storytelling, and I moved into television. And there was always something, um, not missing, but there was something that I knew I wasn't hooked into, best way
mhm,
to say it. And I think we all so many of us go through this in our lives where we're going along and we love what we're doing, because I always loved what I was doing. I love working with actors. It's my favorite, one of my favorite things, and storytelling. It was confusing to me because I would come home at night sometimes and say, well, I have this great job and a great salary. I have awards. I have Emmy awards for this work.
mhm,
Why? There's something else. Yet I didn't do anything about it,
mhm.
as quite often we do. So
Yeah.
there were signs. And the first sign came in the form of a psychic reading that I was having with a really wonderful woman that I've worked with. And she said, I see and she's kind of cool. And she said, there's a handsome dude over your right shoulder. And I said, really, who is he? And she said, well, I don't know. He kind of is genie like looking. And he's telling me that he's been with you your every lifetime, your entire lifetime, and he oversees your Akashic records. And I asked her, what are those? I didn't know. And she said, I don't know, but that's what he's saying he does. So I began to research a little bit. I was still working in television, I think. And so I resonated definitely. And I was like, I feel like I know this, but it didn't bang me over the head yet. And
Mhm.
then I was in, I don't know how much time later, I was in a metaphysical bookstore, and and there was a book on a shelf, literally teetering off the shelf. And I looked up and pulled it off the shelf, and it was How to Read Your Akashic Records. And that was the second sign.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I took that book, read it. It was the author is Linda Howe, who I eventually studied with at the Center for Akashic Studies. Um, it was so easy. I went through the book. I just knew it. It was most likely it was because she is and was accessing the Akashic records through her writing as well. So I was receiving who I am through that book, remembering, I should say. And then I opened records, and I was hearing thoughts that weren't my own. So I would do my own. I would open my own records, and then and I would hear blocks of thought that were just amazing, kind of similar in feeling to Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh. I would just hear
Yeah.
this dialogue, and then I would show it to people that I loved, very close people, because I was still questioning it. And I would say, maybe this is just me making this up. And they would say, no, because
Yeah.
they received something, some kind of activation from the wording and the thoughts and the feelings and the sense of divine. So that's how it started. But again, second time, I still didn't move forward with it. And then on one of my birthdays, one of my dearest friends put a whole bunch of cash in a card to begin studying at the Center for Akashic Studies. And so I just went, okay, I receive it, I'm doing it.
Mhm,
And everything shifted for me.
mhm, mhm.
It became easy. I love working with people. I love sharing the good news. Um, and the good news is that we are all really wonderful and whole just as we are.
Yeah.
And we need to be reminded, right? But divine can do it. So that's my journey. And the way they're working together now is I'm writing, because another thing that I discovered in my own records
Mhm.
through my own work in my records is that my records was showing me that my records showed me as a writer. And I would be saying back to my, there are light energies that oversee our records. And I would be sort of saying, well, no, I'm a director. And the records would be like, Mary, your records show you writing. So
Hmm.
once I said yes to that, then the next thing I know, I'm writing screenplay, and it's
Hmm.
about Mary Magdalene's story, just came to me with
Yeah.
ease and grace.
Yeah.
And so there, I mean, when we say yes to who we are,
Yeah.
everything flows. And we have, and then we receive, or rather we take inspired actions out of that knowing. That's
Mhm.
key also to the healing.
Mhm. Yeah, this is really beautiful. And I love because you've actually opened my records and we've talked about them. And it was the first time that I had ever done this. And it was well, we've talked about what an incredible experience it has been for me. It continues to be. And um one of the things that I think is so tremendous and amazing about this kind of work is the recognition of self in the reading, of where you're actually, what I heard from you are things that I had known. And one of the most important messages I feel that you were able to pass on to me is this aspect of saying, okay, great. Now remember all the things that you know, but you've forgotten through your conditioning in this life. And then take all these things that through the conditioning in your life you are really good at, and then bring them together and
Yes,
work on living your life this way. And this to me is truly the key. And what I hear you talking about, and what I'm sure I will begin to experience for myself on different levels, is that it doesn't have to be done at the exclusion of.
it's never done in the Akashic records, or what we
Yeah.
learn from the records through the records is that
Yeah.
it's never excluding anything.
Yeah.
That's what's different. That's what's, I think that's
Yeah.
also being brought forward more now because we are as a planet shifting.
Yeah.
And so there's an easier allowance of that, I guess, that idea. We have been, I don't want to use the word brainwash, but we've been talked into this idea that we've got to get rid of aspects of our life, or our actions or things in our past. No, in the records, we get to, Linda Howard says, mine, M-I-N-E, we get to mine the energy of
Mhm.
every icky experience that we think was negative in our lives. We can actually look at that from the perspective of the records. And when we do, it becomes an opportunity and an asset. And you just described it. You
Yeah.
get to pull it in, as well as the other fun part, I think it's fun, is we get to access past lives as well, because
Mhm.
energy never dies. So our DNA in our soul incarnating
Yeah.
lifetime after lifetime, our soul contains the DNA, the energy in our DNA from every lifetime. So we can actually tap into it just by intention,
Yeah.
that aspect of our DNA, once we learn about a past life.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
This is really and truly where the power lies, because we are so individually powerful. And when we learn to recognize the things that make up who it is that we are, and we complete that in some way, not to say that we're ever totally complete, but
Mhm.
just bringing together two halves of a person, and then being able to create whatever that formation is, and then continue to add to that through life, is such an exciting and amazing, it's such a gift that we can give ourselves, really.
It really is a gift, and it's who we already are.
Yeah.
See, that's also the new message. Is we don't have to go learn anything, get anything.
Yeah.
We already are that. It's like what Eckhart Tolle speaks about the power of now. If we just know we're already expanded, we're already love and light and powerful in that, just know that, not believe it,
Yeah.
know it,
Yeah.
then everything we do from that moment forward to the next now will come from that. It will be inspired from that. Um, the other thing too is, that I love this idea that we get to, what I have learned, because I've done all kinds of therapies in my life,
Mhm.
myself, as many of us have, when
Yeah.
we've been just searching and going through, bopping through life, figuring things out. What I love about the records is that what I have experienced is that, um, when we take an akashic perspective on an issue, such as being stuck or something that's troubling us. But when we take the
Mhm.
Akashic perspective on that, we then use that same situation that we think was stuckness, and it turns into an opportunity. And that's kind of what we're talking about. It's
Yeah.
the Akashic perspective. What is that? It's the divine perspective.
Hmm.
It is
Hmm.
that the essence of everything, the all that isness of everything, and the grandness and greatness of everything that is in every cell in our body, in every one of us. And so
Hmm.
when we look at our things that we feel stuck about or are confused about from that perspective, it just is like I equate it to a sprocket that gets out of its groove,
Hmm.
as we all do. It's challenging on this planet. And then when we're in the Akashic records and we're in the perspective of the divine aspect of ourselves, it just gently snaps right in.
Yeah.
And we just feel good.
I feel that this is such an important point. And it's such an important point because what happens is that when, through our conditioning of this lifetime, we
Hmm.
really learn to expect good things to take a certain form and bad things to take a certain form. And when you're in the soup of everything, the quantum field, it is in this space that the possibilities are quite literally infinite. And for people who have conceptual difficulty in looking at this, I think that one of the most important things is to truly embrace and understand that being late to something, and I actually said this recently in another speaker's discussion that I was having with them, but being late to something can, in fact, from a 350,000-foot view, not the 35-foot view of our lives,
Hmm.
be exactly the right experience for us to have actually avoided something that was much more detrimental in our lives by making us late. So, did we avoid a car accident? Did we avoid a shooting? Did we avoid, we don't really know what these things are per se, but when we recognize and welcome into our life all the things that come into our life,
Hmm.
and realize that there's a great synchronicity and synergy when we are acting from our true selves, then we recognize that, okay, that 5 minutes turned out to be something that was really good, even if we don't know exactly why. Somehow we're always given a clue where perhaps everyone else didn't arrive until minute 4, or
Hmm.
it's really hard to explain if you haven't been through it. But I think it's such an important point that you're hitting on.
It is important. There was a director of photography that I knew, and he had a saying that he would bring to his crew. He did national commercials and things, and beautiful man. And he said he would tell before they started out, they would have a plan for how this particular commercial was going to go, lighting wise, cinematography wise. And he would say to his crew, let's look for the magic moment. And
Mhm.
when I asked him what is the magic moment, he said, well, the magic moment is when a major light piece or generator goes and the whole production stops. Now you can do two things. It's we're dancing around the same thing that you just brought up. We can get
Absolutely.
panicky, and I've worked with the people that are just panicky. And I
Yeah.
have to say, stop right now. Because when I was directing, I had like a lot of people that were around me that were waiting for my cues. And
Mhm.
so I know what it's like to say stop, right? And he would just, but he would pre-pave it because he said 100% of the time when something went not according to plan, it was a magic moment. The
Yeah.
lighting was different. The shot changed. It was magnificent. A producer had a new idea when they saw something because the generator broke down or whatever. And it's like, I love that story because that's the same thing. Because we try and control, this is another thing we do, that's the ego conscious, tricking us into you must control that this is the time you have to meet and
Yeah.
dee 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 da da, that being late that you're dancing around right now. And it's
Mhm.
like, not that we should run around being late, but the thing is, if these things happen, it is in it's synchronicity somehow.
Yeah.
If we could look at it from that perspective when these things happen, oh my gosh, first of all, I think we would accomplish way more as a humanity,
Mhm.
right? Because we wouldn't be looking at each other pointing fingers,
That's
and
right. That's
right?
right. Yeah. This is
So
right.
I, yeah, I totally agree.
it also gives us this ability to really experience how time is not quite as real as we think it is.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, in situations like that, like I've been in situations where I knew that it was going to take in a certain amount of traffic an hour and 15 minutes to get
Mm-hmm.
somewhere. And I basically just said, I know that before I start this journey, I'm going to arrive at exactly the on time moment. And I was very late leaving for a reason. And to watch time literally warp during that period and to
Mm-hmm.
see myself arrive at right around 45 minutes when it should have taken it an hour and 15 minutes
Mm-hmm. I've
because
had
I
that
had
happen.
only 45 minutes. And I'm looking at the clock, mind you. But this is for individuals that have been through this and they truly understand what I'm talking about. And it's also opening the door for some of you that are sitting there thinking, huh, there's something in that. And this is where we start to really understand what it means to be in the mix of everything. And to recognize really what we're able to bring through each day and to create ease and being in our lives simply from living from within who we are as
Yes.
we're able to create this in the outside environment.
And the world
Yeah.
and the cosmos is so much more than what we've been told, maybe
Yeah.
we've grown up with. It's so
Yeah.
much more. And one thing that comes up a lot is, well, you collapsed time, by the way, and that's
Yep.
what happened there. And
Yep.
I've done that too.
Yeah.
The I don't mean to say the trick, but what helps is when it's what you did, you intended. And in a it sounds like in an interesting way, you just knew, I will get there on time. No matter what time I'm leaving, I'm going to get there on time. And then there had to be a releasing.
Yeah.
Even though you're looking at the clock, it doesn't matter. I've done that in the car. I
Yeah.
mean, traffic, LA traffic, I've had that a lot.
Yeah.
And I've done that. And if we're in a panic, nope, won't work. But when we go, I'm going to get there exactly when I need to get there. That
Mhm.
is the most for the highest good of everyone. And then release it. It isn't, then just watch. And
Mhm.
the records remind us that there is no time. That's a construct of humanity, third dimension, we'll say.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
there's so much more going on. I'm learning and I'm feeling into it. And I don't need proof, because sometimes people will say, I don't get it. Explain that.
Yeah. And this
Explain
is
the divine. Yeah.
And this is what we're taught to do, right? It has to look a certain way. It has to be
Yes.
something that we can understand, that we can conceptualize. But when
Right.
we truly experience who we are, this idea of achieving what it is that we're setting out to achieve is it becomes a completely different experience.
Totally
Um,
different experience.
yeah,
We're so much more powerful than we allow ourselves to be. I
yeah,
mean, it's still not, oh, the records bring so many interesting things about that our planet began in a
yeah.
way where we were speaking telepathically.
Hmm.
We're not needing food. There's a concept. We weren't even needing food when the planet started. The way
Yeah.
we know it, chewing food. We've got all our nourishment from the sun and from the planets and from Gaia herself, the energy of
Mhm.
Gaia. I mean, there are all these things that now ancient wisdom is coming forward, right?
Mhm.
Um, we have a lot of people that were working in the 70s and now, like a Greg Braden, who was really bigger actually, or more known in the 70s. Now he's huge again. And
Yeah.
he experienced ancient wisdom, went around the world bringing forward ancient wisdom. The other guy, the hero, Joseph Campbell,
Mhm.
studied cultures and how cultures deal with things like death and
Fascinating.
dying and
Fascinating. Yeah.
transformation and transcendence and all of that. So now we have that happening again. We're actually tapping back into the life force and what indigenous cultures can show us about what we're really about, like what life is really about. And I'm so happy about that. You
Me
know,
too. Me
it's
too.
really a very exciting, I think it's a very exciting time right now.
Yeah. This is a time that, whether we recognize it or not, we all are here at this time for a very specific purpose.
Hmm.
And We each get to discover what that means for us.
Hmm.
But that's also why we've come together in this space. And so for me, it's wonderful and exciting to be able to explore some of this with you.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
really
Me
amazing.
too.
Yeah,
Me too.
yeah.
I
Thank
love
you.
what you're doing. This is
Thank you.
very important.
Thank you. Would you like to share at this time the gift that you're making available to our listeners and viewers so they can become more familiar with the work that you do?
Sure. So I'm writing my first book that I've been nudged about from Divine. Uh, the first book is called In the Akashic Realm: Conversations with the Divine. And what that book is, it's what would happen for me is, as I was working on my own things in
Mhm.
my records, they would impart things about humanity, and then finally said, bring this into a book for people. Anyway, so that's what this book is. It is almost complete, and I'm going to offer chapter one
Great.
of this book for anyone who wants to read it. So that first chapter two is called "Feel the Love Inside You,"
Amazing.
and it is really a nice beginning to feeling the Akashic Records. And what's great about this book is that it is the Akashic Records speaking. It might be me different, saying leading into it
Yeah.
something, but it's all in the words of divine. It's all coming from that divine source.
Mhm.
So when you read it or reread it, just like re-listening to readings, it shifts and changes.
Mhm.
That's why sacred texts still have power, because they actually are infused with a quantum divine energy,
Mhm.
certain texts, where you'll open the book and something happens, or you feel something, whatever. And no one, logically, we can't figure that out.
Yeah.
But we don't have to. We just need to know there is this divine source, universe, whatever, and it's in these words. So when I reread what sections of my book, I'm again going, whoa, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. It's so nice. Please share the website where they can download
Sure.
the chapter.
Okay, so for the chapter, it's my website is spirittherapybymary.com, and then / chapter one, and it's spelled out chapter ONE, no
Mhm.
space. So my
Great.
website is spirittherapybymary.com, and for the chapter, spirittherapybymary.com / chapter one ONE.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you for making this available. I'm really looking forward to diving into this myself, and it'll be so fantastic to see your book when it's released. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's just really, it's just important. It's important that we're all the work that we're all doing, that we've been sort of behind our walls, uh what do I want to say, like collecting the juice or whatever,
Mhm.
that we're coming out now and we're saying, we're nudging each other. I love the word nudge. We're like
Mhm.
nudging each other into our greater selves
Yeah.
when we
Yeah.
can. We're nudging ourselves. We're allowing ourselves to be nudged, because that's how I feel when I'm working in the records. I'm always nudged back in, and I get like, oh, whoa, I forgot. Oh, yes, I
Mhm.
get. And when I work with clients, the things that come through, although they are specifically the light energies overseeing that person's Akashic records, it is divine essence
Mhm.
revealing itself in 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 such a magnificent way that
Yeah.
I expand every time I'm doing this. I mean, how fun is that? I mean, really.
It's absolutely amazing, and this is one of the things that I think about this space that is really wonderful and gratifying, because everyone who's showing up to watch these videos and everyone who's showing up to be a speaker on the series
Hmm.
really understands that it's everybody's work combined, and the
Yes.
experience of everyone watching the work, um, where we get to create something so completely different that will take on a life of its own, and that we're all here because we recognize this call and this need in ourselves as well as our service to humanity.
Hmm.
And this is what makes it so fundamentally exciting and important. And as we have, convened at this time on the planet, while these energies are changing throughout, we recognize that, there were centuries where none of this was possible, and this is a really, really exciting moment. Yeah.
Yeah, there were centuries, there were paradigms where
Yeah.
there's some talk from the records about that, what you just mentioned.
Hmm.
The 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 good news is, and a lot of people have a hard time with this, but I'm going to share it. The good
Hmm.
news is that we're okay.
Yeah.
Everything is okay. We are okay. The planet is okay. Yes, we're beating it up. We're learning through things. We're doing some things that maybe we shouldn't be doing as a humanity. Will humanity survive this? No telling. Will Gaia survive? Oh yeah,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and so the choices, we have all these choices, which is great. There's no right and wrong. There's just choice and choice and choice. And every choice is an opportunity in
Hmm.
the eyes of the Akashic Records. And I love that because that is a beautiful way to live. It's calming, it makes sense. But I love hearing we're really okay. There's nothing wrong.
Hmm.
Isn't that an interesting concept? There's
Well,
nothing
it is.
wrong.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting concept, and it's something that people will truly resonate with. And for some, it may not make a lot of sense at this moment. And I think for many of us, it's this aspect of where we can't really be attached to much of what is tomorrow, but we can certainly identify with where our hearts are today, and how it is that we choose our decisions, because it is our reaction to a situation
Mhm.
that determines what is the future. Uh,
Yes,
and
yes.
and each of us gets to be solidly in ourselves in making these choices, and this moment that we've had on our planet to pause and to be alone and to be quote unquote in isolation, and to think through what it is that we're choosing and what it is that we're creating. This is where the magic begins. Yeah.
Yes. The records actually imparted to me. I asked about the coronavirus a year ago, and
Mhm.
and it will be in the book, and is in the book. But one of the things that they said was, doesn't matter about the source of it and all that, not to be discussed now, but they said the way through it, or the way that they said send love to
Mhm.
the actual essence of the virus itself, and it will transmute into not being a virus anymore.
Mhm.
Perceived virus, by the way.
Mhm.
I find that very interesting. So we can really do that. We can just send love to the it itself, the energy of it, and
Mhm.
um, and it will transmute, because that's what love does.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And this planet is all about love. So
Mhm,
um,
mhm.
I
Yes.
think that we all feel this, and really get to understand this on a whole new level. Yeah,
I agree. Beautiful.
wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we close today?
No, the only thing I just want to add is that life is beautiful and wonderful, and so are people. And
Yeah.
I remember of sharing somewhere, I love loving people.
Mhm.
Some people say I love people, and I also don't. I mean, I also don't like the way people do certain things, but that's something else. But at the true essence of human beings, we are all beautiful human beings, and I love that part of people, and I get to help shine their own light of that to them, which just affirms to me more and more that that is who we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you very much. And thank you for being here, sharing your wisdom and your experience and your journey. Uh,
Thank you.
Really nice. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Me
Yeah,
too.
yeah, great. Thank you. And for everyone who's watching, we look forward to reading your comments on the video, and hearing from you. And please make sure that you download Mary's book and have a look at it as the preview. So thank you, everyone, for being here and being a huge and important part of our community.